The spring game is 3 days away, and there are as many storylines as ever. Today, I'm joined by a special guest. We have Justin Adams from the Nebraska Voice of College Football. We're going to be going over our two things to watch throughout the spring game. He's going to give two, I'm going to give two, and then we're going to go over our predictions that we have for the game on Saturday. So, Justin, anything to say before we get into it?
No, I appreciate you having me on. And part one, Wilson came onto my channel and did part one. Y'all showed love over there, so make sure y'all show some love here and hit your man with a sub and a like if you're from the Voice College Football. So,
Absolutely. That will be linked down below. If you did not catch that first part, that'll be linked in the description. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it with the number one storyline you have, Justin. And yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of go into the positionless defense. You know, we talked about the positionless offense, and of course, the 3-3-5 by nature is a little bit more of a positionless defense. However, last year, the defense that we saw was good. Yes, very, very good in terms of numbers and production and just overall defensive play. However, moving forward a year now, we have some of these pieces in place, specifically, you know, Tony White pieces, Matt Rhule pieces that they want to get in there to be able to run the defense in the way that they want to run the defense. So in a lot of these instances, you see a lot of these guys listed as cornerback, you know, especially on our recruiting classes, cornerbacks, you know, or safeties, defensive backs, you know. However, those are just placeholders, it seems. You know, those you look more at the body types of these guys and you kind of get a feel for where they're going to do them. You know, you have your guys like a Hill, who's the longer range of your corners. And then you got, you know, your shorter, stockier, you know, safeties. And so where are they going to utilize those guys? You know, is Hill going to be specifically a cornerback? Probably because of his physical traits and his length. But what about those guys who are size and to be a safety, size to be a rollover into outside linebacker? You know, what about these linebackers who can roll down into the edge position? You know, what about these guys who can move along the defensive line that can pair along with Nash and Ty? You know, so it's going to be really interesting to see guys like, you know, Stephon Thompson, who's played with them before. And, you know, we got guys like Buford coming in and making noise, you know, in the cornerback room, you know, guys like that who are allowing this, you know, ability to move these guys to where they want them. Now that the cornerback room has more depth, then they can move some of these guys into the safety position that they want to do. So I'm really curious to see how that defensive rotation looks and just how much they actually move these guys around, you know, because like we talked about before, it's already moving, a ton of moving parts. That's why it's such a hard defense to prepare for. But do we see more movement? And I expect that we will, and just how much it remains to be seen. But that's going to be a big wrinkle in this defense and going to be something that makes them harder to prepare for this year.
Yeah, there's three players I want to mention when it comes to that positionless defense that I'm going to be watching out for. First one's Vincent Shavers. He's currently projected to play inside linebacker, but we'll see if they put him off the ball a little bit, maybe even at that jack spot. I watched his high school film. We have that on my channel, and you feel really good about him basically anywhere on this defense. The second one I want to watch out for is Malcolm Hartsaw, a guy who played corner last year. Matt Rhule says he's exclusively playing with the safeties, but I want to see if they put him into a box. They actually put him back as a nickel corner, or if he just stays purely at safety. And the last guy I want to watch out for there is Prince Walling Manuel, a guy who has had his head in the dirt on the D-line, has played a little bit of jack as well, more of a outside backer. So we'll see what he does there in his second year. But yeah, positionless defense, that's big for Matt Rhule. It's big for Tony White, the ability to play multiple spots in the secondary, multiple spots in that linebacker core. So,
yep.
Yeah. So let's go into my number one storyline to watch out for. And this is the O-line versus D-line, the battle of the trenches. And really, this is a battle between the proven and the unproven. We're talking about a D-line unit that took over the Big Ten last year. You had a couple of guys on there who were all Big Ten honorable mentions. You had two freshman All-Americans and Prince Well, like I just said, and then Cameron Lenhard. Now, the O-line, a little bit more unproven. Of course, they progressively got better as 2023 went on, but they still need to take a big jump in order to be the unit we know they can be in the Big Ten. So got to watch out for that. We're talking about this D-line some more. In 2023, they had the most sacks of a Nebraska team since 2013. That's the most in a decade. And it didn't even feel like a lot. It really wasn't. But just to put that in perspective of how good that D line can be in 2024 and to potentially be a top 10 unit. And then we're talking about the offensive line. For the first time in a long time, I've said this in past videos, you feel very good about that starting five. You feel very good about your tackles, your guards, Ben Scott at center. But we feel good about the depth as well. Some of the younger players, Sam Sledge, Gunnar Gatula, even Jacob Hood, who transferred in from Georgia. So that's really the thing that I'm going to be watching out for is that battle of trenches. And we know this as Nebraska fans. In order to be successful in college football, in order to be successful in the Big Ten, you have got to have a top unit on both the O-line and D-line. Matt Rhule understands that. He said that in his opening press conference. He said that every day since. It's time to prove it here in the spring game.
Yeah, without a doubt. And kind of like you mentioned before, with the number of sacks, it was to the point where we were in single digits a couple seasons in sacks. And so while, we were able to get more pressures on, offenses last year, I think this year we're going to be able to get more efficient pressures, which means we're not going to have to run as many stunts because I just think we have more talent. I think we're going to be able to get guys home a lot quicker. I think we're going to get more pressure from our line, which is going to let our linebackers be able to sit back a little bit more sometimes, and play coverage. And it's really going to kind of let these guys play loose and free in the way they're supposed to, because in an offense, offense and defense, just in football in general, it's such an instinctual game that when all of the parts are moving well and you trust the guy next to you, you really can focus in on just your job. And that's when a team becomes great, is when each individual player can focus on their job because they trust the guy next to them, and that guy next to them trusts the guy next to them. Nobody gets out of position. Everybody's doing what they are asked to do. And yeah, I think the offensive line is probably the most upside I've seen from a Husker offensive line that I can remember, in terms of just young talent, in terms of the current developing talent, and some of the leadership that we have, though. Some of these guys, in terms of offensive line talent that maybe won't be NFL players by the time they leave, but these guys have been there through the worst of it. These guys have, seen the mentality of these different teams, seen the different cultures, and they can really help bring these younger guys up to speed. So yeah, really exciting battle there. And iron sharpens iron. The defensive line being as good as it is only going to make the offensive line that much better. So that'll be very, very fun to watch play out. Go ahead. Were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to take it to our next storyline. You had one, I had one. Now let's get into your second.
Used to hosting. I'm sorry about that. My second, sorry. Here we go. And it is going to be tight end playbook. Now, the way I worded it here is a little interesting, right? Tight ends expected to move around on offense. What am I talking about? Okay, obviously, we talked about positionless defense. We're going to talk about offense now, and it's a positionless offense. Now, to not beat a dead horse by saying that, I think the biggest thing here is, in previous years, Nebraska has not had tight end depth, and this year, Nebraska has probably the most depth it's had in a while, and still, albeit not a lot of depth. I mean, there's a lot of talent there, but not a lot of experience. And, but with that being said, we had Matt Rhule put the gif of Walter Payton jumping over the line, with the Bears. And when asked about that, he was talking about, I'm going to have guys like Carter Nelson put in the backfield and things like that. So my thing becomes just how many different ways are we going to see these tight ends utilized? How many different packages do they have to use these guys? Because there's a wide array of talent and different types of talent between the guys we have on the team. You have a guy like a Fedoni, who's a very, very good receiving option. You have a guy like Carter Nelson, who's also a really good receiving option, but can do, a little bit all around. He's a little bit of an all-around tight end. You have your guys like a Borkacher, who's just a guy who does the right things and plays the game the right way every time he's out there, And so how will these guys be utilized, and what will it look like? What is it going to look like to have a Carter Nelson in the backfield? We have a lot of these guys even that are coming in these recruiting classes that are double tight end wide receivers. Some of these guys in our recruiting class are listed as tight end, play out wide more than they play tight end, And so I'm just really, really interested to see those start to move into this offense and really open up this playbook a lot, because when you can start utilizing some of the tight ends, a Fedoni and a Carter Nelson, be able to use those guys and their athleticism and their size in different ways, it's going to be fun to watch. And then also, Heinrich Haarberg getting out there and maybe getting some packages, him in the tight end spot, because we saw last year early on in the season, I think it was first game of the season or second game. I think it was Colorado game where he caught a pass. He went out there and caught a pass before we ever knew he was going to have to step into quarterback role. So really interested to see if they'll put him in those situations. And just I'm excited about this tighter room. So I'm really curious to see how they open it up a bit and utilize it.
Yeah, it's a big shame that Carter Nelson was not an early enrollee, so we won't be able to watch him in the spring game. But yeah, he's a guy who is a positionless tight end. He has so much experience throughout high school. He played running back, he played wide receiver, played tight end, obviously in 8-man football. But yeah, absolutely, that's a good point with the tight ends, especially again with Carter Nelson, because he's not big enough yet in his freshman year to really play traditional tight end in the Big Ten. You probably have to put him at a flex wide receiver in order for him to get playing time. So if he was playing, that's something I'd watch out for. But guys like Thomas Fedoni as well, move them around, move them at wide receiver, put them in motion. And ideally, I love what Georgia does, especially with Brock Bowers, who was there last year. They put him in motion. They put him at wide receiver. They put him in the backfield. I mean, he was the ultimate utility knife in their offense. And there are so many tight ends that I believe that can do that for Nebraska. Again, a guy like Fedoni, a guy like an Ismail Smith-Flores, who's going into his second year and was just a pure athlete, a guy who was an Iowa legacy, actually.
Yep.
So there's guys like him that I want to watch out for in that tight end room. But yeah, and that really brings me into my point, is the revamped offense with Glenn Thomas. Now, Marcus Satterfield's our offensive coordinator, right? And that's not changing. He's going to be calling plays. He really has all control. But Glenn Thomas is still that co-offense coordinator. He has to have a say in this offense. He's going to bring a wrinkle. And this brings me to a point that I say all the time on my channel. Good coaches don't make their players change to their offense. They change their offense based on the players that you have. So really, Dylan Raiola, he does not fit the offense that we ran last year, more of an option offense where, again, Heinrich Haarberg led the team in rushing yards. That's not happening this year with Raiola, obviously. So I want to see if we're more in the shotgun this year, if we're more of a pro-style West Coast offense that we see taking over college football over the last decade. Because really, that's what it's going to take to win. Obviously, you're still going to need a downhill running game to be at the forefront of this offense. But again, no more are the days of the option. No more are the days of Dylan Raiola or any quarterback rushing more than 5-10 times a game. That's not going to happen. So really want to see what Glenn Thomas brings to this offense. And again, it all goes back to the quarterback room. He's the co-offense coordinator / quarterback coach. He has so much experience with Matt Rhule in the NFL. He was with the Steelers last year. He was with the Falcons when Matt Ryan was there. So he knows how to coach up these quarterbacks. He knows how to coach up an offense. So really excited to see what he has there if we're going to be more of a West Coast offense. Again, we're not going to be an air raid. I know Nebraska fans hate that. I get comments about that all the time. We cannot be an air raid. We can never pass the ball more than we run it. And I agree, because when we did that with Marco Whipple a couple years ago, that was a tremendous failure. But with that being said, I still think we need to transition a little bit more to a pro-style West Coast offense, and hopefully we get a glimpse of that. Now, I will say one thing. Matt Rhule and Marcus Satterfield and Glenn Thomas, they're going to show us a condensed version of this offense. It happens every single year in the spring game. They're not going to show you everything. They're going to hide a lot of stuff, including Dylan Raiola. They're not going to show him a lot, because when you have something good and nobody else has seen him, nobody else has film on him, Matt Rhule's all about strategy. You want to keep it that way going up to the first week of the year. So we're not going to get all the answers in the spring game, nor about Dylan Raiola or this offense, but it's something that I'm going to keep my eye out for, because it's absolutely going to be relevant going to those first games of the year.
100%. And to your point about the offense, Bill Callahan really ruined the West Coast offense in the minds of Nebraska fans when he came over. However, one of the things that people need to note about Satterfield is never going to get away from a physical run game. None of these guys are. They're never going to get away from a physical run game. Satterfield likes to huddle. He likes to be big. He likes to get physical. That is never going to go away. But what we weren't able to do last year is he likes to use the run game to set up the deep pass, right? And we weren't able to get the deep pass game going. And so I do think there will be more of a balance. And, if you look at his Baylor offenses, they averaged about 265 yards passing to about 165 yards rushing, and a little bit of a different team now. But that shows you the kind of balance they want. Like you said, Glenn Thomas, like, they've worked together, so they know each other. They know each other very well. When that came to who's calling plays, it doesn't matter. These guys know their system. Their system's in place. It doesn't matter. They're all involved in the game plan. Glenn Thomas was in Atlanta, got Matt Ryan to two of his three Pro Bowls and one of his highest completion percentages of his career. Was very good over there at Pittsburgh. People talk about, the Steelers quarterback room. Well, he wasn't a quarterback coach there. He was an analyst on the offense. So it's one of those things that he knows his stuff. And if you hear him talk about, we heard his press conference the other day, and you hear him talk about quarterbacks, he has a quarterback mind. And that stands out, the difference between him and Satterfield. And Satterfield will even admit it. Like, when it comes to just quarterbacks, Glenn Thomas knows quarterbacks. And so this offense is going to be very, very fun. And last year's offense, what we saw, similar to what you're saying with the spring game, is going to be a vanilla offense. Last year was kind of a vanilla offense and not what they wanted it to even look like. So trying to compare last year's offense and put it onto the field this year with what we got, it's going to look completely different. And so this offense, there's a lot to be excited about because of the cohesion of the staff. And that's going to bring these players along a lot quicker. And that's why Matt Rhule likes to bring these guys that he's worked with. They have similar messaging. They have similar styles, and they have what they're telling all of these players matches. And that alludes to why the players and the culture have improved, the retention's improved. And I think it's just, everybody's bought into all of these coaches. And when you got a guy like a Glenn Thomas who's worked with Matt Ryan before, who's worked with them at Baylor, and he's been able to bring every single quarterback that he's worked with along and bring them to the best marks of their career everywhere he's gone. If you look at everywhere he's gone, each quarterback that he has brought along with him has been one of the best, if not the best, quarterbacks at that school in their history. So the resume speaks for itself, and it's just going to be exciting to even see the vanilla offense that comes out the spring game, which is probably going to look more like what we're going to see than last year's offense. So really excited stuff. Like you said, they're going to save a lot of it, but it's going to be fun to just see some of these players get out there and just get moving around in this offense and defense, man. A lot of exciting stuff. And like I said, we've been drinking the Kool-Aid a lot of years, but this year feels different.
Yeah, speaking of the Kool-Aid, so we went over our two storylines each. Now let's end off the video. I'm going to start with you. Give me one prediction off the top of your head. It could be a fun prediction, player prediction, whatever, about what we're going to see on Saturday.
Okay. I was going to say Tristan Alvano hits a 55-plus yarder.
Okay, that'll get Nebraska fans fired up.
Yeah.
That was one of the players that I almost mentioned in our video on your channel about guys who I want to watch in that spring game. Tristan Alvano hopefully makes a jump going into a sophomore year after pretty disappointing freshman campaign. But I think my prediction is going to be that I talked about this in your video again, but Demetrius Bell just is going to ball out, is going to prove to a lot of people that he's a force to be reckoned with. Might even be the MVP of the wide receivers in the spring game. Dale Raiola, when he was interviewed by the press, said that the first guy off his lips when he was talking about wide receivers that he's built a connection with was Demetrius Bell. So again, I have big hopes and dreams for him, and hopefully he can have a big day on Saturday. So that will do it for our storylines and predictions video. Again, thank you, Justin Adams, for joining me on this. Again, if you have not checked out part one, that is linked down below, but super excited about the spring game. Hey, make sure to subscribe to his channel, the Nebraska Voice of College Football, or follow him on Twitter, the H-Town Husker. Again, has a lot of content on those platforms. So if you don't want to miss out on any of that, please subscribe to him. Anything left to say, Justin?
Nope. I appreciate you having me. And, we'll have some more stuff probably coming for y'all this season. So y'all stay tuned and, subscribe here, subscribe to the Voice College Football and get ready for what we got coming.
Yeah. So make sure to comment down below any storylines you have yourself. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Matt Rhule, and see you in the next one.